Back in 1991, I was kayaking on the North Fork of the American, which is a class 4. I was a relatively new kayaker, but like all relatively new kayakers, just a little cocky. So I was on a river that was a little bigger than I should have been on. I was with a very good friend of mine who's an outstanding kayaker, and so she was good for safety. And I also had a new paddle that day that was a little bigger in the blade and longer, so that when I was shooting across the river at one point, I planted my paddle. It was just a little too fast and a little too hard, and it ripped my arms up above my head and back and dislocated my right shoulder to the front.
I've been teaching swiftwater rescue for about 7 years now, and I've worked all over Oregon and Washington and California, teaching different groups and working with a lot of different types of groups. Sometimes working with like search and rescue personnel, sometimes working with firefighters or military, or working with a lot of river guides. That's one of the things I'm really passionate about because I am a river guide myself. Some of the more serious accidents that are fairly common, quite a few dislocated shoulders. I've probably seen 2 or 3 dozen dislocated shoulders in the past 11, 12 years. So a lot of shoulder dislocations, both shoulder dislocations that were a repeated accident for somebody or injury and they knew how to put it back in, but also some really, really bad ones, first-time injuries which needed to go to the hospital to be reduced. I saw one 11 hours from civilization, and the person who it happened to was a very strong guy and we couldn't reduce it in the field, and so he was in a lot of pain for the entire trip to the hospital.
I went over immediately, of course, knew what had happened, pulled out of my boat, and then started to swim for it. The good news is, as I swam, it relocated. That is, it reduced my dislocation on its own. The bad news is, when my friend came along with her boat to save me, I reached for the boat with my right hand, which meant that as soon as she pulled it right back out again. And she began paddling me over to the shore. And she got there, which is good, because we were right above Chamberlain Falls. Chamberlain Falls is about a 15-foot vertical drop, river wide. There's no way to avoid it, and it goes down at that water level into a recirculating hole that is very big and may not let you go. And you do not want to be in there with a dislocated shoulder. She made a break for it because she didn't want to go over it either and leave me behind. So she just made a beeline for the shore, got there and just told me to let go, and I did, and I grabbed a rock still in the river. With my feet, I could feel the tug of the waterfall, and I'm hanging onto that rock for dear life with my left hand, and then she manages to wade out in the eddy, get a line to me, and then pull me over to the shore.
There's lots of research that shows that folks who have rescue training are more adequately prepared to respond to something when it goes wrong, and not only that, but you're more likely to prevent an accident from happening. So the class that I'm teaching right now is a River Rescue Certification class. It's a class that was developed by the company I work for, which is called Sierra Rescue. The group I'm working with today is super great. A lot of private boaters, a lot of people with tons of experience. There's people in my class today, 15, 20, 25 years of boating experience who have never taken a rescue class. And so it's really great for me as an instructor to see people realizing, oh, hey, for the last 15 years, this good thing, we've been really lucky, and we may have had some close calls, which let us know, hey, maybe we should take a look at taking a rescue class. And that's why a lot of them are here. Sometimes it takes that wake-up moment of like, oh my gosh, we barely missed it this last time. It could have been a lot worse than it was, to get them into a class.
We're now about a mile downstream from the put-in with a guy with a dislocated shoulder, and the only thing to do is to hike out. And the North Fork Canyon is a canyon about like that. And she knew up on the canyon wall there was a trail to get back to the parking lot. And the only way to get up there is I gotta climb that canyon wall with one arm because the other one doesn't work at all. In fact, it was dislocated up and I couldn't bring it down. And so I ended up walking out, pretty much looking like I was under arrest or a POW or something, and managed to walk up that canyon wall without my hands. We got to the trail, walked back. She set me down on the edge and she said she'd run for the car. And while she did that, I managed to somehow, I don't know how, get my dry top off, which is a very clinging garment tied everywhere. I managed to get it off with my left hand and my teeth, because I knew when I got to the hospital, first thing they were just going to take a pair of scissors and cut that thing. It was brand new, I didn't want them to do it. She said it was probably a good thing, because being busy like that meant that I was still thinking, and relatively clearly, and I wasn't yet going into shock. So that made it good for her. And the story ends well. She piles me in the car, we go to the nearest hospital, take a quick x-ray to make sure there's nothing bad going to happen, and that doctor, who clearly had done this before, just takes a hold of it, gives it a twist, boom, pops it back in.
Accidents on the river definitely have a pattern to them, and there's tons of evidence that shows that like these patterns that happen aren't totally random. They're very organized, and we see males 18 to 25, alcohol, no PFD, poor equipment and training, no training, bad judgment, bad experience, very rough environmental conditions. All of these things lead to accidents, and if we can learn to recognize these accident factors before they happen, we can stop accidents from happening.
Often as not, the accident happens because of a decision made before you got on the river or didn't make, as in my case. Once the river was up, I should have looked at it and known better and not gotten on. Certainly doing something outside or above your skill level, well beyond your skill level, is another. If I was going to go back there again, there's no question but I would make two changes. First, I would not have gotten on the river. I had actually told myself I wasn't going to get on if it was more than a certain volume, and I looked at it and kind of thought it wasn't. I realized later it was well over that volume. So that was just a poor choice. Now that's back in the day when you didn't have online water readings, you just had to read it from a bridge or something. But I would not be on that river at that water level. And second, I would not take a new piece of equipment on a class 4. Until I was familiar with it, I should have stuck with my old paddle. That would have prevented it. Either of those changes would have prevented the thing from happening. Once it happened, I think she did exactly the right thing. She, A, saved me, stabilized me, made sure nothing else was wrong, and then made a rescue plan that was not going to make it any worse, and it worked.
The definition of wilderness setting is at least 1 hour from definitive care, which truthfully means like if there was a major earthquake or accident or like what just happened in Japan, a lot of those people are in a wilderness setting even though they're in the middle of a city. They have no access to medical treatment for greater than an hour. You're in the wilderness even if you're in the middle of the city. But in the field out here, you have the resources you have around you. If you have ropes, paddles, first aid kits, whatever you have with you, that's what you got, that's it. Working in the hospital, you have a lot of resources. You've got nurses, doctors, other staff that can help. If you have a concern about somebody having chest pain or cardiac issues, you can pick up the phone, call an EKG, they'll bring a monitor down and take a look at that person's electrical pattern in their heart. You can't do that here in the field. And so really the best that we can do is get training and medical training and get training in swiftwater rescue and really, I think, equip ourselves with knowledge, because when you're out there, a lot of the times you got to do basically with what you have and what your knowledge is and what your equipment is. And, a lot of the times wilderness medicine scenarios and situations don't go very well because people were ill-equipped to deal with them. The wilderness is a beautiful place. I spent almost my entire life outside and on rivers. Unfortunately, I've never been involved with any kind of accident, but by spending the extra time, other people will share those beautiful experiences and not get into a situation that they didn't necessarily plan on. So I really encourage people to get educated about the risks that are there and understand what they need to do to stay away from them, because education is the key. That really is.